Have you ever walked out of a movie completely destroyed on the inside and had no idea whether to recommend it or not? That's exactly what happens to people with the Passion of the Christ. And if you're here right now, you've probably seen it or heard about it, and you're left with that uncomfortable feeling of, I don't know what to think. Today, we're going to fix that. Because this film has three layers that most people completely miss. The artistic layer, the controversial one, and the one nobody talks about. The message Mel Gibson hid underneath all that blood. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a clear opinion. I promise. Before we talk about the film, we need to talk about the man behind it. Mel Gibson in 2004 wasn't just any director. This was the guy who won the Oscar with Braveheart, a movie about a blue-painted Scotsman on a horse screaming freedom. The man knew how to do epic. But instead of riding that wave and making easy Hollywood hits, he decided to bet his entire career, $30 million of his own money, on a film in Aramaic and Latin, two dead languages, about the last 12 hours of Jesus Christ's life. Pause for a second. Would you put your entire net worth into a subtitled film in languages nobody speaks? Me neither, but Gibson did, and it made over $611 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing independent film in history. That already tells you something. This film touched a nerve that very few works ever touch. Now, here's where things get uncomfortable. If you look up reviews of The Passion of the Christ, you'll find two types of people: those who consider it a spiritual masterpiece and those who dismiss it as a snuff film dressed up as religion. And you probably already have one of those two opinions sitting in your head. Which one's yours? The real problem isn't the violence. The problem is that nobody is analyzing this film correctly. Think about it this way. When you watch a Tarantino film filled with blood and stylized violence, the world applauds. But when Gibson does the exact same thing with an explicit narrative and a spiritual purpose, the outrage is total. Isn't that a little strange? And here's the first thing I want you to notice. The violence in this film isn't decoration. It is the message. Gibson wanted you to feel, deep in your bones, what sacrifice truly means. Not to understand it intellectually, to feel it. That's the difference between making an action movie and making a film that destroys you from the inside. First clear takeaway: the extreme violence in this film is a deliberate artistic choice, not gratuitous sadism. Now let's talk about Jim Caviezel. Because this man didn't just play Jesus Christ, he practically lived it. During production, Caviezel was struck by lightning on set. He dislocated his shoulder carrying the cross. He suffered hypothermia, and he received real lashes by accident during the flagellation scene. And you know what his reaction was? Keep filming. That's commitment, and you can see it on screen. Because there's something in Caviezel's eyes in this film that no other actor who's ever played Christ has managed to get. A superhuman calm mixed with absolutely real pain. It's not acting, it's something else entirely. Beside him, Maya Morgenstern, as the Virgin Mary, delivers one of the quietest and most devastating performances in modern cinema. With almost no dialogue, just her face, she makes you feel the full weight of a mother watching her son die. If you remember the scene where their eyes meet while Jesus carries the cross, that one scene alone is worth the entire film. Second takeaway: the cast elevates this film far above the controversy. Now, and this is important, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. But wait, wasn't this film anti-Semitic? That's a legitimate question, and it deserves an honest answer. Yes, the film was accused of portraying Jewish leaders as the primary villains of the story, and that criticism has some foundation. Gibson exaggerates the role of the high priests and turns them into almost cartoonish figures at certain points. But there's a nuance most people ignore. The narrative comes directly from the Gospels. Gibson didn't invent those characters. He took them from biblical texts that have been circulating for 2,000 years. Does that mean every biblical adaptation is automatically justified? Not necessarily. But it does mean that blaming Gibson for creating the anti-Semitism is a simplification. The real conversation should be this:
How do you adapt historical and religious texts without falling into stereotypes? That's a problem with biblical cinema in general, not just this film. Third takeaway. The anti-Semitism controversy is real, but it requires context. You can't analyze it without understanding where the narrative comes from. Remember what I said at the very beginning? That this film has 3 layers. We've covered the artistic one, we've covered the controversial one, now the one nobody mentions. There's a scene in the film where Jesus, in the middle of the most brutal pain you can imagine, looks up and says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And in that moment, the film stops being a violent film. It becomes a direct question to you watching right now. Could you do that? I'm not asking whether you're a Christian, I'm asking you as a human being. Would you forgive someone who is destroying you? That's what Gibson embeds in this film that most people miss because they're too busy watching the blood. Underneath all that suffering is an enormous philosophical argument. The most authentic love is the kind that holds even when it gets nothing in return. And that, whether you're a believer or not, is powerful. Fourth takeaway. Beneath the violence lies a philosophical argument that transcends religion. All right, we've reached the end. Let's do a quick recap because at the beginning I promised you a clear opinion and I'm going to deliver. The violence is intentional and serves the narrative. The cast, especially Caviezel, is extraordinary. The anti-Semitism controversy exists but needs context to be properly understood. And beneath all the controversy lies a universal philosophical message. Is it a perfect film? No. There are moments where Gibson pushes too hard and loses the pacing. Some characters tip into the grotesque. And yes, you can absolutely question how certain groups are represented. But let's go back to what I said at the beginning. Can you name another film that, with a $30 million budget, in dead languages, with no conventional Hollywood stars, made $600 million and sparked a philosophical, theological, and cinematic debate that's still alive 20 years later? I'll wait. The Passion of the Christ is a film you don't enjoy. It's a film you endure. And deep down, that was exactly the point. If you have a different take or a question that's still bugging you, drop it in the comments. Do you think the violence was justified or did it go too far? And if this breakdown was useful, you already know what to do. See you in the next one.